Hiya, good evening everybody. It's great to see so many of you here today. Welcome to the launch of the recommendations of the Leeds Climate Change Citizens Jury. I'm Fatima Zainab and I am one of 25 members randomly selected to take part in the Citizens Jury. You'll see seated here are some of the members of the jury. Unfortunately, some of the members have not been able to turn up. So here is the programme for tonight's event. By the end of tonight, you will understand more about the process of the Citizens Jury, how it was organised and how it was funded. Later on in the evening, there will be a chance for everyone to ask any questions, and after the question and answer session, everyone will join the tables at the back around here, which has different themes such as transport, role of business, communication, and there will be a few jury members sat at each table so that we are able to discuss the recommendations in more detail. So we're going to start this evening by sharing with you some information about how the Citizens Jury worked. To help us get a better understanding, we will hear from members of the Citizens Jury as well as the Leeds City Council and some of the organisers. Steve, another member of the jury, will explain some of the aims of this evening's event.
Thank you. So, the aims of this evening's event are to increase understanding of the Citizens Jury process, to share the recommendations of the Leeds Climate Change Citizens Jury, and to discuss with you how our recommendations can be implemented.
Thank you, Steve. The Citizens Jury itself was funded by the Leeds Climate Commission. I'd like to introduce you to Kate Locke from the Climate Commission for a few words.
Thank you very much. Yes, on behalf of Leeds Climate Commission, I'd like to welcome you to this evening. And as you say, Citizens Jury was funded and organised by us, working with Shared Future. And we're really delighted at how it's gone. Just a very brief word on Leeds Climate Commission in case you don't know about us. We're an independent partnership. We bring together organisations from across the public, private and civic sectors of the city, and it's all about driving climate action in Leeds. We started in 2017, and 2019's been a real game changer for us. It's when we've really stepped up a gear, and that's been because of the Climate Emergency Declaration by Leeds City Council and everything that's happened since then. The Climate Commission is chaired by Professor Andy Goldson from the University of Leeds, and you'll meet him later. He'll be chairing a Q&A. And Councillor Lisa Mulheron, who you'll also hear from in a minute, is the vice chair of the strategy group. So why do Citizens Jury? As I say, it's been a real step up for us this year, and it's because of the Climate Emergency Declaration and the kind of process that has really initiated. The Council is holding what's called the Big Leeds Climate Conversation, and the Leeds Climate Commission is part of that. We've been sort of jointly kind of hosting it. And what we want to do on behalf of the Climate Commission was to really take a kind of deeper dive into some of the issues that are being discussed as part of this. So the Citizens Jury is an opportunity to do that and to really sort of look into the issues. There's lots of different ways of going on assessing people's opinions across the city, but we wanted to take a deeper dive into the issues. So that's what we're doing with the Citizens Jury, and we're just really thrilled at the way it's gone. I think mainly we want to know that the next 10 years is really going to be about transformative change for the city, and we really want to know, we've got to bring people with us on this journey. So that's what this is about, and the Citizens Jury is we're finding out what the people of Leeds want to do about this and involving them, and we have a representative mini sample of Leeds here, which is absolutely marvellous. So I'm not going to go on any more, but I just want to say, as well as hearing from their voices tonight, we'd like to hear from your voices too. We are engaging with people on Twitter, so if you're tweeting tonight, can you follow us at Leeds Climate Com, and the hashtag is Leeds Climate. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
you very much, Kate. One of the most important institutions that is able to influence our response to climate change is Leeds City Council. I'm pleased to say that we have Councillor Lisa Mulheron with us this evening. She's the Executive Member for Climate Change, Transport and Sustainable Development at Leeds City Council.
Thank you, Fatima, and I'd just really like to start by saying a huge thank you to all of you for all the work that you put in over 9 weeks of listening to evidence from experts, challenging all of us in terms of the information that we presented, asking some really difficult questions as well. We've had to go away and come back with information for you. So thank you all for the work that you put into to doing this. You put yourselves forward to represent the City of Leeds, and on behalf of Leeds City Council I'd like to thank you for the time that you've committed to take your deliberations on this really crucially important issue for the city and the country and for the globe, frankly, as well. So thank you. I'd like to also thank all of the people in the room who gave evidence to the jurors. I know that there were quite a few people who came in and spoke on a wide range of issues that the jurors wanted to hear more information about, and also to Pete, to Kate, to Andy, to Paul, and all of the members of the Oversight Committee who made this process possible. So thank you for that. There's been 9 weeks, as I say, of information gathering, of challenge to people, to ask some really thoughtful questions that have been put forward by the jury in terms of them putting together the recommendations to us this evening. And I'd just also like to say this will sit very helpfully alongside the work that the Council's been doing as part of the Big Leeds Climate Conversation since the start of the summer school holidays, finishing in about a week's time in terms of gathering the views of the citizens of Leeds. And the jurors that you see here before you today, over 4,000 letters went out to parts of Leeds to make sure that it was demographically representative, that it was also representative of the views of Leeds citizens in terms of their perception of the climate emergency. So again, to have a kind of mini representation of the city in terms of the jury is really, really important to us, and I know that great efforts were made to ensure that it was fully representative, so thank you again for ensuring that. We will be using the evidence that you've presented to us this evening alongside the evidence we've had from the citizens who replied. Had over 7,000 people now replied to our Big Leeds Climate Conversation questionnaire. And we'll be using all of that to help inform our action plan, which will be coming now to the Executive Board of Council in the first week in January. We've got people working on that information, some people in the room who are working flat out to make sure that that's published by the end of this year. It's been slightly delayed with the general election, but we will have that then for we'll see the first week in January in terms of the Council's action plan and how we take these ideas forward. And I know that you've kind of put a lot of work in already, but also at the end of your sessions, I think you asked to be kept informed about how this will be taken forward. And I don't know whether you've given any thought about whether you would like to meet together again as a group, but it might be that we could come back to you if you were happy to do that, for us to feed back on how we're taking those ideas forward. I think probably after all the time and effort you put in, I think you might actually like to do that, but I'll leave that idea with you. And I've also got here this evening with us Councillor Neil Walshaw, who chairs our Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. Do you want to give a wave, Neil? And he's going to be speaking at the end of the event tonight, but again, I know that Neil's committee would very much like the opportunity to discuss the proposals in your findings from the jury. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. No doubt you all have lots of questions about how were we all recruited I'd like to introduce Peter Bryant from Shared Future. Shared Future was commissioned by the Leeds Climate Commission to facilitate and organise all of these sessions. Peter will tell us a little bit more about how the process was organised.
Hi everybody, my name is Peter Bryant. So as Fatima said, I was one of the facilitators that worked with these lovely people here. And I'm from an organisation called Shared Future, so we're a community interest company, a social enterprise, a not-for-profit organisation that does this kind of thing. So we run about over 30 citizens' juries on various topics, from fracking to alcohol harm across the country over the last 15 years. And our aim is to make sure that citizens are able to influence the policies that affect them in their neighbourhoods. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about how we got to this point before we hear more from the citizens' jury members themselves. So kind of good practice for these kind of processes, these kind of deliberative processes, is for the existence of an oversight panel. So the Oversight Panel existed and met kind of parallel to the process that you're going to learn more about this evening. And their job was to make sure that the process that was followed was fair and was rigorous and was robust. So the membership of that Oversight Panel you can see on the screen there. So we had Leeds City Council in the form of Councillor Mulheron and also Polly Cook as the lead officer. We had the Leeds Chamber of Commerce in the form of Mark Goldston, the policy officer from the Chamber of Commerce. We had University of Leeds, the chair of the Climate Commission, Andy Goldson. We had representation from Extinction Rebellion, Lydia. We had a representation from Friends of the Earth, Yorkshire Water, the Medina Town Movement, Our Future Leeds, Paul Chatterton at the back, the Racial Justice Network, Si and Penny, who I think are here tonight. Voluntary Action Leeds for the voluntary sector, a youth climate striker. Robbie, are you here tonight? He's somewhere. And also Project Rome, another private business that's a member of the Chamber of Commerce. So it was their purpose, their whole role was to come together to make sure that, first of all, that they could agree on what the question that was going to be asked was, so they had to agree that. The second thing they had to agree was the identity of the commentators or the experts that presented to the citizens' jury. So they had to battle out between them who they would agree could present on the different topics. Okay? So once they had that agreement, then it was our job at Shared Future to try and get in touch with those commentators and recruit them. So we use the term commentators rather than experts in recognition that everybody in the room is an expert. And the third role of the Oversight Panel was to agree the recruitment methodology. So the method that we used for recruiting was that we sent out 4,000 letters, okay, across the Leeds City region. And this was done through an organisation called the Sortition Foundation, who are regularly used to recruit for citizens' assemblies and citizens' juries across Britain and Europe. So these letters appeared in people's, through the Royal Mail database, address database. They landed on people's doormats. And we ended up with 25 people who were recruited to come to the first of the 9 sessions. Now that, as expected, that averaged to 21 people that came to the majority of the sessions. So there's usually a few people that drop out. And the method we use can be called randomly selected, but it's actually nearly randomly selected because we recruited to a profile. So the profile of the jury reflects the profile of the wider population in the Leeds City region. So this is where we ended up with. So we wanted to make sure there was representation in all those age groups, 15 to 29, 30 to 44, 45 to 59, and 60 plus. And the figures in brackets, and that you'll also be able to see in the report when it's released later this evening, shows you the numbers of people that were present in the jury from those different age groups. Likewise, male, female, ethnicity, and also we recruited in terms of indices of deprivation. So we made sure there were members of the jury were from some of the lower levels, of the lower deciles of the indices of deprivation, so the more deprived neighbourhoods, through up to decile 9 and 10. And we also asked people in the recruitment whether or not they described themselves as being disabled and recruited accordingly so that the profile reflected that too. Now, crucially, we asked people what their attitude to climate change was. And we used a question from the government's public attitudes tracker from March 2019, which asked, how concerned, if at all, are you about climate change? And people's response, according to very concerned, fairly concerned, and not concerned, we recruited so that that matched those national statistics as well. And we also made sure that we recruited from the geography of the city core, the inner urban, the outer urban, market town, and non-urban. And the result was these beautiful people sat right in front of me.
The question that we had to answer was, what should Leeds do about the emergency of climate change?
We felt it was important for you to hear directly from some of us, some of our personal stories and feelings about why we got involved. My name is Juliet, and I've lived in South Leeds for over 20 years. Most of this time I've spent working as a community nurse in many of the Leeds postcodes. This city is a wonderfully diverse place, and I'm proud to call myself a Leeds resident. I have been very concerned about climate change for a long time, from the effects it is currently having to what might happen in the future. We all come to this topic from different angles and interests. My personal interest has always been around the effect it has on animals, their disappearing habitats, the devastating forest fires, melting glaciers and rising sea levels. There is no denying our climate is changing, and that harm is being caused to the natural world is pushing other species to the point of extinction. Through no fault of their own, this is a man-made disaster. When Leeds declared a climate emergency back in March and committed to making the city carbon neutral by 2030, I was delighted, but unsure what I could do to help. When the invitation to join the citizens' jury arrived, I didn't hesitate to respond. As my husband said, you can't bang on about something and then not do anything about it. I must admit, though, I thought it was 6 weeks and not 9. When I started these sessions, I knew a little bit about climate change, but now I feel much more aware of the facts and what contributes to this. At times, the problems have seemed overwhelming and quite scary, but as the sessions went on, it was amazing to hear what people are already doing or planning to do so in the future. I've enjoyed this process and have committed to making change as my contribution to climate change. I hope you all will too.
Hi everyone, my name is Adil. I'm 24 and like many people my age, I felt quite disillusioned with the state of politics, particularly how it didn't seem to represent us. We weren't really counted, and it just seems so alien to just how normal society seems to govern. Also, just the effect of most of the decisions in this country we made 200 miles away in London. So people over here, naturally we feel like we've been forgotten. Also with climate change, I remember learning about it in school, but since I got older, it didn't really seem to be that big of an issue. It was talked about, but not really. Like you heard about it every now and then, but no one really quite understood the impact, the scale, and the severity of it. So when this opportunity came along, I thought, okay, now's the chance for me to get involved and actually contribute and see what all this is about. And throughout this process, I've managed to learn so much, not just from the commentators, but just from the fellow jury members. I was exposed to so many different perspectives that I'd never been exposed to myself, because naturally you only see life from your own eyes and you're just hearing different angles, different attitudes, people looking at stuff from their own lenses. It really broadened my mindset. And one thing that stuck out was, across the 25 of us, one thing was common. We all had a shared love for Leeds. We were passionate about Leeds and we wanted to do right by Leeds. And also from the commentators, what I learned was, it is a climate emergency. And whilst, yes, that is a problem, it's also an opportunity for us to get together and actually use this as a chance to make Leeds better. We really push for that change and grow our city and develop that. And I look across and I see a lot of you, and a lot of you, I assume you have a lot of influence. So I really hope as you guys listen to our recommendations, you take it to heart and you take it seriously, and you can really sort of help drive this forward and bring that positive action and help people like myself feel included again, the normal people, help us feel represented, help us feel heard, and just honestly help us save our planet. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to echo some of Juliet and Adil's remarks. From my perspective, I felt that I didn't know enough about climate change when really I should. I trained as a scientist and I read New Scientist every fortnight, but I really underestimated quite how serious the problem is. And when I was given the opportunity to serve on the jury, I'm quite interested in politics, and I was aware that deliberative democracy has been used in other countries, notably Ireland, as a way of tackling problems that conventional political decision-making can't. And so, as soon as I was offered the opportunity, I jumped at the chance. Also, I'm an accountant, so I don't get out very much. And, the prospect of meeting fellow citizens who I probably wouldn't encounter in my professional life was quite appealing. And the process has taught me a lot. It's taught me to listen, which is not something we do enough of. I found it a profoundly humbling experience. I learned things I really should have known, and I thought it was fantastic the way we all brought our various skills and experiences to the problem. And we've come up with something which I personally feel very proud of, and I hope you'll be able to take forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. So before we hear what our actual recommendations are, we're going to some of us are going to explain what actually happened in each of our sessions together. So we're going to start with Louisa, who's going to tell us a bit more about our first meeting.
Hi, my name's Louisa, and I'm going to talk about a little bit what we did in session 1, was like what things were improved we had in each areas. We actually sort of debated which areas we lived in. I live in Meanwood, just up from Meanwood, just off Stonegate Road, and I live near certain fields, parks and stuff like that. We need more of these. And also there's a recycling place near where I live, so I actually would prefer more of those so we could go to them and things. Oh yeah, and we also did problem trees where certain things need to be looked at into more detail, which we came up with certain things in certain areas. And that was session 1, which was very enjoyable, and we sort of got to meet each other and everything. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrew. What I'm going to talk about are the commentators. So a key part of the citizen jury are the commentators, or experts, expert witnesses. They were needed because obviously when we were selected, we came from a point of not knowing little or nothing at all. And we needed to have the professional knowledge from people who were academics, people that were doing things from a research point of view, or were doing that as part of their role. They gave us their experiences, they highlighted the seriousness of the issue from a local point of view and from a global point of view, which was new to us. Their job was to share their opinions and experiences, so we had their first-hand accounts of what happened, which was important for us to consider and weigh that up with our own opinions and decide whether we thought it had a big enough impact. The commentators that were chosen were decided by the panel that Pete mentioned earlier, so we had no involvement in who was chosen, but everybody that was chosen were experts in their field, and therefore we listened to what they had to say. The format followed a similar structure. Whoever turned up, it was normally a 20-minute presentation where they spoke, whether using PowerPoints or visual images. Sometimes they used Lego blocks, which was quite innovative, but it gave us a demonstration of how much carbon was issued by certain industries, so you could see by visually what impact was being made. Obviously they're professionals, so they use jargon sometimes. So as not to confuse us, we all had red cards, so if they said something which threw us, held up a red card, said, can you please clarify what you mean? They'd explain, and then they'd carry on. And afterwards we'd have small group discussions about what we'd heard, and then there'd be a question and answer session about what we'd heard and what we discussed, and then we'd question them further about what they'd said. And that would happen with each commentator that we saw. Thank you.
Apologies if you can't see me, but I'm sure you can hear me. Just to elaborate a little bit more on what Andrew has just said, in session 2, we had an introduction from the on the climate change and its impacts from the first commentators, Professor Julie Steinberger and Dr. Kat Scott. In this session, we also worked in groups and pairs to what our future vision of Leeds would be in 30 years. This was an exercise in building relationships and trust with the other members of the jury, but also to see how our opinions varied, but also showed that we were in a good position to help start building a better Leeds. In session 3, we watched a short music video by Greta Thunberg before discussing it in pairs, before our next set of commentators arrived, who were Professor Andy Goldson from the Leeds Climate Commission and Paul Chatterton from our future Leeds, who spoke to us about Leeds and climate change. In the 4th session, the commentator's theme was how does change happen? And we were joined by Andrew Sims from the Rapid Transition Alliance and Penny Wangara-Jones and Si Murray from the Racial Justice Network. In this session, we were also asked to reflect on what themes we wanted to explore in depth in sessions 5 to 7. We reached a consensus to what we wanted to cover, being transport and communication, but asked the Oversight Panel to recommend a third from housing, energy or waste stuff. It was recommended that housing will be our third theme.
My name's Paddy, and so what we did in sessions 5, 6 and 7 and 8 is that we essentially just expanded on those topics that we chose. So the first 2 were the ones that we'd actually chose, which were transport and housing, and they were kind of logical kind of conclusions based on like the first like few weeks of thought. Like these were common themes that clearly everyone was concerned about as a point of view as environment as well as being a citizen in Leeds. So we had I'm not going to read out all the commentators' names, I hope you can all see them, but they're all from various points of view: the council, from charities, from like the Chamber of Commerce, things like that, and it gave us a real insight into different aspects of this issue and kind of broke down exactly ways that we can look at it and we can approach it. And then the final session, which was a bit different, it was more about how do we get this message out there, because obviously by this time we're all aware of all these issues. We're into it now. How are we going to communicate that to everyone else? So that was again various people from the Oversight Panel as well as various people from other organisations, and notably the Climate Outreach Project. That stuck out in my mind because that was all about approaching people in the way that they'd like to be approached on this issue, and I think that that's something that we can all learn from and all use to communicate to people in Leeds, to kind of tailor that message to other people. Cheers.
Good evening everyone, my name's Jeff, and I'd like to just summarise what happened after the individual sessions. After working for nearly 2 months, so it's quite a time, we finally got to the point where we could pull some of the recommendations that we'd heard together. If that sounds like a somewhat daunting task, it was, but not for too long, because we'd all been thinking about the possible recommendations during the theme sessions, which we've already heard about, and I pulled together some broad themes. Examples of transport and housing were given, but we needed a structured way of bringing all of these recommendations out so that we could discuss and evaluate them. The first stage of it, deciding what it was we wanted to focus on, was what we called speed dating. And what happened was we sat down in pairs facing each other. And it may sound slightly weird, but in fact it wasn't quite so bad. It was fast-paced and it got everybody motivated, I think. So we split up into the pairs, and then we composed lists of the sorts of things that we had found important individually. And then we swapped partners across the lines several times, and gradually we started to build up a kind of consensus. Themes began to emerge from the group, and some of the big issues which were something that Leeds could actually do something about, that became an important viewpoint. So we began to focus on how Leeds can help ameliorate the climate emergency. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So Jeff told you about our partner swapping, which sounds more exciting than perhaps it was in practice. Once we'd worked through that process and the issues were fresh in our minds, we then applied them to the themes that Jeff's mentioned. And we peeled off into small groups to develop recommendations under each theme. This was a very fluid process, so people moved from one group to the other according to their interests. Everybody had a chance to contribute and deploy their expertise where they thought it mattered. There was plenty of discussion, this was a whole day, and what's really important, there was constructive challenge. So all of these recommendations have been through a pretty rigorous process. And from my view, the recommendations that emerged at the end are thoroughly tested and thought through. At the end of the day, we sat down and we ranked the recommendations in order of importance, and that's importance in terms of positive impact on the people of Leeds, and also how urgent we believe a particular recommendation needs to be. Thanks.
So now the moment that you've all waited for is finally here. So we met as complete strangers back in September, and over 9 meetings and 27 hours of deliberation, we talked, we listened, and we also argued. On the last week of our meeting, we wrote 12 recommendations that attempt to answer our question, what should Leeds do about the emergency of climate change? At the end of the process, we all voted anonymously for our top 7 recommendations. Maxine will start the recommendations with a brief statement written and agreed by the whole jury.
The following statement was written by a group of 10 jury members and then edited and approved by the whole jury within a large group discussion. Climate change is not someone else's problem. It won't go away or get better if we ignore it. We are facing a climate change emergency. Immediate and urgent action is required. Everyone from Leeds City Council, individuals, politicians, businesses, community groups and other organisations has their part to play. Every action counts. We are a diverse group, unified in our passion to resolve this issue. We have had the opportunity to challenge our own and each other's perceptions. We have concluded that we are at crisis point. We believe our recommendations can make Leeds a better place to live, as well as addressing climate change. We don't have all the answers, but we hope our recommendations will go some way towards tackling the problem. Leeds led the world in the Industrial Revolution. We believe the city can now lead an environmental revolution.
Recommendation A, this is the recommendation that was voted the most important. We recommend that extensive positive action is taken to make the use of private cars a last resort for transportation. As a priority, bus provision starting with first bus should be taken back within public control. Other measures may include safe cycle lanes and cycle storage, park and ride, increased and improved pedestrian areas, a united public transport fare system such as the Oyster card, a framework to help car sharing including taxis and congestion charge. The suggestion that bus provision starting with first bus should be taken back within public control was approved by 100% of the members of the citizens' jury.
Recommendation B. All existing housing must be made more energy efficient. Housing must be retrofitted. We recommend that Leeds City Council enables communities to come together and to insulate their homes and to transition to greener energy sources via locally organised enterprises. This will encourage skill sharing and encourage people to think more greenly.
Leeds act together. There needs to be a large-scale communication drive in Leeds delivered through social media, face-to-face events, community groups, company advertising and screens in the city and other methods. Education in schools is central to this. We believe this needs clear, positive and practical messages which emphasise the necessity for individuals, communities and organisations to action at all levels.
So, funding and finance, which is the high point in any presentation, I would say. We recommend exploring a variety of funding sources so that we're not over-reliant on any single one, so we can access finance readily and cheaply, and so that each source has a positive effect on people's behaviour. And our recommendation is fivefold. An investment fund involving investors who can buy shares in it. The fund then invests in projects. Projects make money. The money goes back into new projects to pay investors a return on their original stake. A local government green bond, by which the council identifies projects, batches them together, asks investors to buy a bond, and the council pays interest to investors who hold the bonds. A carbon budget for every individual so that you can choose lower carbon products with smart labelling. You can change your behaviour by avoiding high carbon activities such as flying. Pension funds, to encourage pension fund managers to invest in green bonds, the Green Investment Fund and cleaner, greener companies. Crowdfunding, a website for accredited schemes for would-be investors. And lastly, business case support to help communities identify and develop proposals that could be invested in by the investment fund or as part of a green bond or for crowdfunding.
Recommendation E. We recommend that there should be more locally devolved power to ensure and enable action of climate change. We recommend that the political groups in Leeds and the Yorkshire region should work together to get more decision power, making power locally, like Manchester.
Yeah, this is recommendation F. Creating more green spaces in Leeds. We've got parks, trees, community gardens, and also reclaiming abandoned spaces that are no longer used.
Recommendation G is that all new housing must be as future-proofed as possible. That is A or B rating, and should include green spaces, shared facilities and communal areas, and new technology, for example, smart homes.
Recommendation H. This is around the call for a Leeds Green New Deal. Now, what do we mean by Green New Deal? So, a Green New Deal is a set of social and economic policies designed to stimulate the development of low-carbon solutions, thereby creating new jobs, boosting the economy and improving people's lives. For example, this could include a citywide housing retrofit programme, creating jobs and reducing energy bills. Other examples include investing in green public transport. Effects of this could include improving air quality, etc. The result of all this would be attracting new green businesses to Leeds and buying/promoting green energy.
Recommendation I. We recommend stopping Leeds Bradford Airport expansion. It is not compatible with zero carbon targets. To make this recommendation happen, Leeds City Council should not improve new road building or selling land to develop. Residents should block expansion and be educated about the impact on carbon footprint. 18 out of the 21 citizen jury members, which is 86%, believe that it is the wrong decision to expand Leeds Bradford Airport. 2 of our members abstained. We also believe that flying must be discouraged by, for example, a frequent flyer tax based on income and number of flights and location, i.e. domestic, and advertising holidays in the UK rather than abroad.
Recommendation J. We'd like to ask companies and organisations in Leeds to pledge to become carbon neutral by 2030. It's a big ask. A Leeds First scheme, a kite mark badge scheme, a bit like fair trade, for Leeds businesses that are actively investing in and supporting climate change action.
Recommendation K, we recommend that more extensive recycling opportunities are made available and accessible to all, for example disabled people and non-drivers. Recommendation L, we recommend that no one in Leeds accepts single-use plastic and no businesses in Leeds offers it. We recommend that all food and drink outlets in Leeds provide refundable deposit cups in place of disposables.
And then finally, going back to what Councillor Mulheron said at the beginning, the jury requests that a progress report from the Leeds Climate Commission, Leeds City Council and all the other stakeholders, an update on all recommendations with details on why and why not something's been taken on, a progress report on any ongoing projects from the recommendations at the following intervals 3, 6 and 9, 12 months from launch date, review of rejected recommendations to see if they're now relevant, and investigate the idea of a repeat process with this group and maybe some new recruits.